And the collapse of the Eurozone growing imminent today. 15 Eurozone countries now on standby after being told a mass credit downgrade is possible in the near future. In response to the Euro crisis, a new political alliance is threatening to impose a set of rules on their fellow Eurozone countries. The so-called Merkozy duo, that is Germany's Angela Merkel and France's Sarkozy, they are demanding automatic sanctions for nations that fail to balance their budgets. To talk more about the crisis in the Eurozone, I spoke to senior analyst at Greencrest Capital, Fraad Wolff, with Standard & Poor putting 15 countries on alert. I asked him, what is the significance of such a massive downgrade and what that would mean? Take a listen.
What the alert means is that there's a 50-50 chance that a downgrade action will be taken in the next 90 days if there isn't some kind of action to ameliorate the problems. If we saw anything like a 15-nation downgrade, particularly the downgrades of France and Germany that are bundled into that, as well as Austria, we would have an event much larger than Lehman Brothers that would cascade through the global markets and would push a teetering and very vulnerable European monetary union into true crisis, as well as sending very damaging shockwaves to the global economy and global financial markets virtually instantaneously and smashing asset prices all over the world.
Well, certainly that sounds awful, but we all knew that things were bad in the Eurozone. Doesn't this just verify what we already know about the region?
Well, yeah, I mean, it verifies that we know there's a sort of seriously impaired situation, that Europe is kind of teetered, buying small amounts of time at the crossroads between a different future, which is highly viable, and a real disastrous, disorderly wind down of the European Union experiment. But we've teetered there for way too long, and there's been a sort of sense that the ECB, the IMF, the sovereign policymakers in many of the European countries believed and conducted themselves as though they had more time than they did, while the financial markets screamed out, as did critics, you don't have more time, you don't have more time, and they kind of lazily looked at their watches and tried to do what was good for them domestically, politically, and acted like they had time that there was every indication did not actually exist.
And can we talk about, in the event that this does happen, and it looks like it's very likely that it will happen, how the situation in the EU can affect confidence in global economies, even here in the U.S.?
I don't think we're getting a near-term 15-country downgrade. What we are going to see is a smaller, more unified European Union, probably with some of the marginal states that were struggling here, which have the highest debt burdens, no longer part of the mechanism. The question is, do we get a stronger, smaller, more unified, with fiscal as well as monetary union, Europe? And if so, how do we get there? How orderly, how voluntary, how disorderly, how involuntary, and how much time and effort do German authorities and IMF and ECB authorities spend trying to force through a wish list of policy concessions from other countries while the clock runs out and the sands grow short in the hourglass?
And, certainly whatever happens will have a global impact. World leaders are concerned. Some are even pointing fingers. Here is Nigel Farage. He is the co-president for the Europe of Freedom and Democracy, that group, expressing his anger at the situation.
You are all in denial. By any objective measure, the euro is a failure. And who is actually responsible? And who's in charge out of you lot? Well, of course, the answer is none of you, because none of you have been elected, none of you actually have any democratic legitimacy for the roles that you currently hold within this crisis.
So, I mean, just your reaction to that. Is the euro a failure? Is this whole system for 17 countries, was it a little too ambitious?
Well, the euro is in terrible shape, as is Europe writ large. They're already heading into a recession with global ramifications. I think it is important to talk about how serious the crisis is, and also to remember that British and American commentators have successfully forecasted 100 of the 12 actual problems that the euro has had. And there have been a number of folks rooting against the euro, sometimes quite unwisely on their own behalf. The crisis is real. It's very serious. The future will be different than the past, but the total apocalypse scenario is still highly avoidable, and I don't think the entire euro experiment is a disaster. I think that's premature, and it has a dose of goodwill coming along with the analysis.
Two people that are trying to avoid it, the leaders of Germany and France, they have this mutual vision for the Eurozone. Could we talk about the significance of this alliance and how it can really help to tackle the euro crisis?
Well, sure, Germany is the anchor, but France is also hugely important, and there's sort of a Franco-German alliance, which is historically interesting here, with Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy kind of taking the front position here. What they have sort of spent several very painful, very expensive, very destructive weeks doing is trying to push through a wish list of fiscal control policies on their weaker partners under the guise of making this a precondition to a bailout. The longer they wait, the more expensive the bailout is, and the bigger problem, the less assured it is to work. There still is a path forward, so I don't think this is over, but I think the situation grows more dire, more perilous, more expensive, and more internationally problematic, literally with each passing hour. And it would be nice to see people put aside their narrow political agendas and go for a solution here, because we're all waiting in the balance, and it's the 11.5th hour for sure.
How can this one be different from some of the other ones we've seen, and can it be a real venue for change?
So we see ECB, Euro-wide, and IMF-related summits all this week. It's a huge week politically, and a solution that is convincing to various increasingly skeptical participants needs to be produced by Friday evening European time. We see Tim Geithner, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, already there, making positive statements of, A, the United States' support for the proposals coming out of the Merkel-Sarkozy alliance, B, the urgency of the matter. We'll see the global central bankers emerge, and we're going to have to see a very credible, large, long-term, as well as immediate pattern of solutions that shore up the financial markets, solve the liquidity crisis slamming into European banks, and also produce for the first time credible long-term commitments, probably in the trillion-euro-plus range, to rebuild and re-solidify the union with additional commitment to a greater fiscal policy union to go along with the now kind of flailing monetary union, as yet unsupported by fiscal unity.
All right, well, I guess we will wait and see what happens. Thank you so much for weighing in on this. That was senior analyst for Greencrest Capital, Fraad Wolff.